and welcome to the next episode of Exclusive, the podcast produced by PaperStreet Web Design and Marketing. As always, I'm your host, Nancy, and today I'm joined by Alyssa, our creative director.
Hi, everyone.
And also Andrew, our web director. Thanks
Hello.
for coming, both of you.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so today we're going to talk about is something that we get questions about a lot, because a lot of people have this mindset of when do I need to know if I need to change up my law firm's website or maybe even a business, but the same rules are going to apply no matter what sort of industry you have, but particularly since PaperStreet mostly just speaks to law firms and attorneys, we're going to cover that mostly. But the thing is that a lot of people feel like, oh, well, I'm just updating my website because I just need to change the aesthetic and things like that. But with that in mind, there's actually a lot of other reasons, with design, of course, being one of them. But we're going to break down to you what are some of the signs that you either need to redesign your website or even do something what we call just a refresh, where you don't necessarily need to recreate everything, but just put some improvement elements in place. All right, the first one and the most obvious one is going to be if your website is 5 years old or more. The reason for that is our design and development teams are going to contribute, but age does factor into this. So, Andrew, why don't you kick us off with this from a technical standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. So even if your website was built in WordPress 5 years ago, a lot of things can change since then, especially if you're using an outside marketing agency to build that website. They may have been using old, outdated plugins or coding methods that may not work as well anymore. Think about once you have a computer that's over 5 years old, it starts getting slow and may need to get replaced. Website is somewhat similar. It's also probably from a technical perspective, not following best practices for ADA compliance, which is very important. Speed. Your website needs to perform very well from a speed and code optimization standpoint for Google's algorithms for ranking. You need to be able to make sure you're using the latest editors for WordPress and flexible editors. Media changes such as podcasts, video, a lot has changed in the last 5 years. And if your website is 5 years or older, it's definitely time to have at least a refresh.
All right, thanks, Andrew. How about Alyssa? What about some of those design signs that it's time to pull the plug and get something new?
Absolutely. There are some, tell giveaways that you can see why a site might be, showing its age. Some of those factors could just be the way that the images are sized or the width of the actual design. If we're going to date back maybe 8 years or more, sites were made really narrow and images were really skinny. And so you just kind of have this sense of not utilizing the full page. There's also just font and color selections, right? There's some colors, especially in the legal industry. You can imagine there's a lot of sites that still use burgundy and just some of these like older colors that don't feel fresh or, on trend for more modern designs. And then there's also just design style elements that were popular at one point. So if you recall, drop shadows, underlined, outlined items and objects. I mean, those are really dated now in terms of styling. So that would be a giveaway as well. And then also sometimes just your bio images. You can tell sometimes when your photos are older. It's just an older style. It's not as crisp. Maybe it's a more dated style of background. So instead of some of the newer backgrounds that we're doing where we're actually removing the backdrop on the attorney headshot, you have more of that typical, headshot background that's more traditional in, the legal industry. So I would say those are the top signs that, from a design standpoint, that the site is dated.
Yeah, I would agree with both of those. And just the other thing is that getting creative is just overall increasing in terms of what we see our firms doing and what our firms' competitors are doing. It's not about showing a gavel anymore. Pick a rhinoceros, it leaves an impact. It's not about just saying, hire us, we're the best. It's getting to know the attorney. It's kind of like breaking the mold of what a lawyer and a law firm's website should be and just the cliches that have been always assigned to it. It's about taking steps for creativity, trying to actually connect with your audience. It's your website is not just there to provide your contact information anymore. It is to create a brand for who you are. So just thinking of your website as just a vehicle for your phone number is just a big mistake that we're seeing. And like I said, we're websites older than 5 years or even more. Some of us have seen websites like 15 years old. You probably fall into those older traps. All
Yeah.
right. And moving right along to that is a lot of times when I meet with our clients, I'll say to them, they'll say to me, "Oh, our website looks great." And I'll say to them, "How are you looking at your website? Are you looking at it on your computer or are you looking at it on a phone or a tablet?" And that's the big thing too. Is your website mobile responsive? Is it friendly on those devices? Andrew, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of traffic for all websites now is mobile first. It's mobile based. So a lot of our clients that come to us are hyper focused on their desktop website. And for some law firms, a small amount, maybe who have corporate clients, maybe they are mainly viewing it on desktop. But for 95% of law firms out there, all of your traffic is going to be predominantly mobile at this point. So instead of hyper focusing on desktop during a refresh or a rebrand of your website, you really want to think about your site mobile first. It's not as much, there's not as much, I guess, room to have quite as exciting of a design experience on mobile, but it's even more important because it is limited space. So first and foremost, you want to make sure that your new design from a technical standpoint is very fast on mobile. You want to have all of your code and images optimized for mobile. Google now indexes everything mobile first. They don't really care about your desktop website. They're going to be doing all of their scannings of your website and technical analysis for your rankings from a mobile first standpoint. So all of your clients are on mobile and Google is only ranking you based off of mobile. So mobile is definitely king now. That's really my best advice is don't hyper focus on your desktop design, hyper focus on making a high conversion, easy to use mobile website.
So what about when that
Absolutely.
looks like from design, Alyssa?
Yeah, so Andrew is spot on. Having a mobile specific site is really helpful. And with responsive design, well, that's something that PaperStreet does where we create the sites where they're going to respond based on the browser size that you're viewing on. So you should have that seamless transition from desktop to mobile. How you know that your site is mobile friendly is you're going to have a mobile menu. You will have your call to action really prominent on the first, landing of your site on a mobile device. You're going to see right away what you do, the messaging, the branding, the calls to action. That's all going to be at the top. And again, we have to think from a mobile perspective. What are those key elements that need to be readily viewable upon first landing on the mobile version of the site? You'll know that you're mobile friendly when your site goes down to one column of content, that the font sizes are appropriate for viewing on mobile. And that goes both ways, right? If you were to look at some text on mobile that would be appropriate on desktop, it's going to be huge on mobile. And that was going to increase the length of the page, meaning you're going to have to scroll infinitely, right, to just get to the bottom of a page. So we have to think about sizing, and also just maybe some information isn't necessary to have on mobile. Maybe you have it on your desktop, but then it's collapsed, or there's certain functionality features that allow us to load more content as you scroll down. So there's different ways and functionalities to increase the mobile friendliness of the site. But those are some of the key aspects that you want to make sure that your site has on mobile from a design perspective.
Yeah, and just to contribute to that is what Andrew said. For most of the law firms, your clients are coming to you via mobile. And the problem is a lot of times attorneys rely on the fact that, oh, well, they'll keep looking, they'll keep scrolling, they'll try to find the contact information. No, they won't, because you're competing with dozens of other law firms out there, especially if they're Googling to find a family lawyer. If they, or a estate planning, I just use family lawyer as an example, but if they're trying to find a family lawyer, they go to your website, they don't know what to do, they're not going to say, oh, wait, let me research this. They're just going to say, okay, well, let me check this other site. It's probably better because technology kind of translates to your brand's reputation. If they're having trouble with your website, it's old, it's not working, they're moving on. And from there, actually, I'm actually segueing into our next point with that by saying your user experience is going to impact your website and how it's converting and things like that. So, what I tell our clients is you're going to need to check if your site needs a website refresh or new design if you're finding that no one's using your website to contact you. Are you getting contact form submissions? Is anybody using click to call? And if not, we need to improve upon that. Alyssa, why don't you kick us off first on what are some of those things to fix with design user experience that way?
I love this topic because I think that it's so great to see the opportunities that are available with, credibility and conversion factors. And sometimes it's just a few things that could be missing. Sometimes it's a lot. So typically when we talk about a site that's optimized for conversion, you're going to have a couple of like must-have items. You have to make sure that your contact information is readily available. That's either a phone number at the top, a phone button at the top, and like you said, Nancy, perhaps it's a click to chat, could have that feature on the site. Another thing is making sure that right off the bat, a user knows exactly what you do. So again, you could have a beautiful modern site. Maybe you just launched it yesterday, but if it's not clear to the user what you can do for them and why they should contact you, then you are going to miss out on new business. So it has to be very clear what you do, why you're worth them calling, why you're, your value proposition, and any other benefits that you can think of. So maybe it's 24/7 availability, perhaps you have multi-language availability at the firm, perhaps it's a free consultation or no fees until you win. Whatever your, benefits are should be readily available to read on your mobile site and on your regular site. There's also other credibility factors I always recommend to our clients. Proof in Google reviews or other user reviews make a difference. Having testimonials from your prior clients, listing out your case studies or your successful results, basically all of these things to prove that you are credible and that you are successful and that you can be successful for your client. So those are some of the top, I would say, conversion factors you want to make sure are present and readily available for review on the site.
Thanks, Alyssa. What about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I think this also goes back to what we were talking about before with mobile sites. You have a limited space on a mobile device, of course, when you're designing and developing, and you want to make sure you have really well thought out call to actions and well thought out usability so that the site does convert as well as possible, so that you are getting your return on investment from the redesign that you're doing. Other ways you can help with that is through chat. We partner with Engage and we use really any other chat vendor the firm prefers. Call tracking, so you can see where your calls are coming from, what lead sources, especially on mobile with click to call, you can display different phone numbers so that you can determine which marketing campaigns all of your calls are coming from. And really just trying different call to actions and conversions for different pages to see what works. A website isn't going to be something that's just you do one iteration of it and you're done forever. It's something that needs to constantly be updated, and that goes for marketing in general.
With that one, I'm kind of going to try to segue into the next one, which we'll keep short as well. Is another step is going to be signs you need to refresh is you have outdated information, and outdated information in itself may be why your website's not converting. So what does that mean, outdated information? I can't tell you how many websites I still have that say we have COVID-19 safety precautions in place. It's time to take those down. It just makes your website look like you're behind the times if you're still doing those sorts of things. Are all of your office locations on your website? Are all of your practice areas on your website? Are the attorney bios connected to these particular practice areas? Is your phone number up to date? And we laugh because it seems like this is so obvious and so self-explanatory, but a lot of people, and I see this a lot in my meetings with our clients, have this set it and forget it mentality where they created this website. Yeah, it was good. It's got good things. I don't need to change it. is this information old? Are you still talking about worst case scenario? Do you have an old law on the website? Do you have old information? Like, for example, a lot of times, like for my personal injury lawyers, they love to have blog posts and things like that that'll show what were the latest safety stats and things like that. Are your safety stats from 2016? No one cares about those anymore. So a lot of times you may be having these websites that people just going to leave your site if you just look like you're not with the times. Because if someone needs you to win their case, they need you to keep them out of jail. They need you to handle their divorce. They need you to write their will. They need you to handle their car accident. If you look outdated, if you look like you're not on the height of your game, if you're listing safety stats from 10 years ago or claims from 10 years ago, that's not going to show that you're relevant and ahead of the game. So simply, people may not be clicking to call or using your website is because your information is too old and simply not with the times anymore. So it kind of goes hand in hand. Again, it may be something outdated information, such as you don't have a new name or you left out some bios, or we're going so far as to say it's just information that needs to be taken down altogether. So moving right along again is still really kind of harping onto the website's not bringing in traffic. Is it could be if your website is not appearing in search. And this is something that Andrew already kind of alluded to, but it's the kind of thing where you're saying, oh, well, my website's not getting conversions. Is anyone visiting your website? You know, so many of our clients will tell us, oh, I'm a word of mouth law firm and that's all I need to do. But then these firms come to me when we have our evaluation meetings and they'll say, we clients. We haven't gotten any. What are we doing? Need to do that. If people can't find you, they're not going to hire you. Now, what does that mean? There is search engine optimization, obviously, where we customize your site to make sure that you'll appear in search with title tags, meta descriptions, things like that. But sometimes people don't even show up for their own name. Do you even show up in a search for your name? Is your website optimized at all? Because a lot of our bigger firms or corporate firms or things like that, or even some of the firms that just don't believe in SEO, they'll tell us, oh, it doesn't work, things like that. It's something astronomical. Like less than 3% of people will check lower than the top 5 search results. If you're not in those top 5 search results, no one knows you exist. So your website's not bringing in new clients because you're not appearing in search. So again, even though this doesn't seem like it would need to be your website that needs to be updated, it absolutely does, because a lot of times it could be how your website is designed. Is your website in an SEO friendly design? Is your content written in an SEO friendly way? And again, even if you're a corporate firm, you don't need to appear in search. Can people find your bio if they look for you? Can they find your website's name if they're looking for you? Things like that may seem overly simplistic, but if you don't have a properly designed SEO site, it's not going to appear in search. And Alyssa, do you just want to chime in real fast with some of those SEO design features that we make sure that we do with PaperStreet?
Yeah, absolutely. From an SEO standpoint, it kind of goes back to a lot of the conversion factors I mentioned, because again, if you're showing up in searches or you're not, we have to look at why. So one of the things is making sure that we have prominent messaging that features your keywords. We have enough content that also supports your keywords. Then there's also just the visual aspect too, that we're making it readable. We're chunking content, as we call it. So we're putting it in bite-sized pieces that a user can actually digest all of that. And in terms of, just again, working with SEO, it's really all about the conversion, because if you do show up in searches, it's great to have the traffic there, but then if people bounce, it's because they're not seeing what they want to see right away. They don't feel connected to the site. They're not getting the information they're expecting to see, which is either a vote of confidence or you can handle what I'm looking for. And they're comparing it against the competition. So if the competition is saying we can do X, Y, Z, here are your benefits, and then you're not saying that, well, it seems like, why wouldn't you choose the competitor that's speaking to you about what you need and why they're going to benefit you? So again, I always go back to that, because I think that is super key in not forgetting those conversion factors along with the technical side of SEO, because they have to work together.
Absolutely. And Alyssa, you hit upon the next point is just as well, too, that needs to be explored a little bit further, in that your competitors have upped the ante. A lot of times, once again, our poor lawyers, they get so pigeonholed, they look at their site, they say, hey, it still looks great. They're not looking at their competitors' websites. What does that look like? For example, your competitor's website may have been tens of thousands of dollars, and now they have this wow factor website. And unfortunately, in this day and age, it's the truth. It's kind of like having a fancy car. A fancy website tends to indicate a expensive site. So clients assume, well, if they could put all this money into their site, they clearly are doing well. So if you have this older, outdated website that has no functionality or anything like that, you're not going to look like you're as successful as the person who put all the bells and whistles. Now, of course, bells and whistles are just that. They may not secure all of their clients, because some people will look further than that, but also dig deeper into what your competitors are doing. Are they listing their successes? Are they listing more of the claims than what you have on their site? Are their sites anything more that's fancy, or just a better experience than what your competitors have done for the site? Andrew, from a technological site, do you see anything that our clients are doing that would help enhance it to compete with their competitors?
Yeah, I think really what you were saying, where if you have a website that is old looking and you have a competitor that just launched an amazing new product that is utilizing SEO and marketing best practices, they're probably going to see a much higher conversion rate than you are. With that said, we see it all the time where firms where the managing partners may have 40 years experience each. They're incredible attorneys, all this stuff. You might get a group of young people who launch a firm, but then put a lot of money in marketing. They start now overtaking the established firm, because they're using their marketing budget and their marketing expertise on the digital side, and having a nice website that converts well. They're going to be much more successful in the long run. So we see it where kind of startup firms instantly can jump in and start overtaking some of the very established firms. So I would say for even firms that have been around a very long time, staying fresh, staying relevant, and staying on top of marketing is crucial. You can't really just sit back and say, okay, I did marketing for a year, I redesigned my website, now I'm done. It's an ongoing thing that you need to constantly work on, constantly iterate on, or your competitors are going to jump in and overtake you, or new competitors are going to arise too.
Exactly. And a lot of times it only takes one case. Like if somebody's in the news for securing a $10 million verdict or something like that, that may be enough that they're going to start looking at that other page's client's site. So you got to figure out what you're doing to fix that. And then Andrew, you touched on something that's important as well, in the sense that a lot of these older firms, they don't they've created these older websites and they're resting on their laurels, in the sense that they don't have a fresh brand. So it's like they rely on their name. Oh yeah, I'm Smith XYZ law firm. Everybody knows us. But then there's nothing aside from the actual name. But what if your firm gets more partners? What if the main partner leaves? If you're just relying on your name, it's not going to carry you through. So a lot of times you need to update your website to refresh your brand. Now, Alyssa, what does refreshing your brand entail, and how can you connect that to the website?
Yes. So you can go very simple with refreshing your brand, or you can do a whole rebrand. So there's really a complete in between, and again, full spectrum of rebranding. But I'll start off with some of the small stuff. On a small level, a refresh to your brand could look like just slightly updating the logo, maybe using a more modern typeface, updating the colors, maybe adding a more modern pop of color somewhere in the site, all the way down to new photos. Looking at what your messaging is, I think, is a really big part of branding as well. I mean, that really is ultimately what branding is connecting. Is your persona, your brand memorable to your clientele or your potential clientele? Are you connecting with them? So that's something to always reevaluate too, is if you're serving a typical like a target audience, that getting inside their world of who they're looking for, who are they going to trust, who are they going to gravitate towards. Those are all things to think about, and how you can serve them. And so that should all reflect in your brand. So, again, if they're looking for someone who's aggressive, if they're looking for someone who's really confident, all of those things need to come out in your imagery, in your design, in your copy, right? You have to speak that language too, all the way down again to some of the videos that you might produce, and how you communicate to your target audience. So really all of that has to do with your branding. So I think it's always worthwhile to take a look first at who you're serving, and then does everything that you're putting out there, your logo, your imagery, your website, your marketing, your copy, does that all connect and reflect the way you want towards that target audience? And again, messaging too, that comes right from that as well. Are you saying something that's going to capture your audience? Are you saying something that's going to appeal to them? Having something that says, okay, that was memorable, or, oh, they get me and I know they can help me. So those are all things to really think about when it comes to having an impactful brand. And I think it is always worthwhile, because I know as we're talking about signs that you have an outdated site or you have an outdated brand, that's a great place to start looking. Are we reflective of who we say we are and who we want to be and who we want to come our way?
Yeah, thanks. And what's really important, and what I want to end this on, is I want to just point out that it's important to realize that, you know, you don't need to redo everything to fix one problem. So, for example, your website needing a refresh, we're not saying start from scratch and rebuild everything. We're saying take a look at these elements and fix that part. I mean, yeah, if your website's not mobile responsive, you may need a rebuild. Or if your website like has a bad back end, or plugins are killing it or something like that, sometimes you will need a rebuild. But make sure, whether you choose PaperStreet, we hope you do, but whether you work with another agency or anything like that, there should be a refresh element to it where you can change the fonts and your pictures on the site. Or as Melissa said, change your logo and your creative messaging, things like that. So again, don't go into this saying, uh-oh, I fall into one of these traps. I need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a new site, or even tens of thousands on a new site. Maybe it can be fixed in one particular aspect. Maybe you're not appearing in search, but your website looks great. So again, just have the mindset that a refresh for your design, a refresh for your brand, a refresh for your marketing does not always mean for starting from scratch. And the best first step is just, if you find yourself listening to this and saying, uh-oh, I think we have some of those criteria, take a deep breath and find the agency or the developer or the designer, anybody you feel comfortable with, that's going to help you break this down and create a feasible plan. Because again, needing a refresh is not needing to start from scratch. So, Alyssa, Andrew, thank you for joining me today. We hope that this information was helpful to you all. And as always, if you have any questions, you know where to find us. And thank you, and tune in next time. Bye, everyone.